A huge warm welcome to the art vlog, art lovers. I'm beside myself with excitement today because I'm actually going to want to take you inside the #1 anticipated show by me in London this year. It is the Donatello show at the Victoria and Albert Museum here in South Kensington. This is the first major Donatello exhibition ever in the UK. We're expecting 50 works that have never been seen in the UK before, as well as the first show of any kind for about 40 years. Donatello, born in Florence in 1386-ish, we're not quite 100% sure, definitely would be a very strong contender in the fight for the greatest sculptor in Western art. He was revolutionary in so many ways. He produced the first freestanding nude, his bronze David, since classical antiquity. He's just a great of the early Renaissance, and some people would call him the father of the Renaissance. He was constantly experimenting, and he lived a long life. He lived into his 70s or possibly 80s, we're not quite sure, which means that he produced a huge amount of work. It's apt that this show, which is on until the 11th of June and is £20 for a full price ticket, is being shown at the Victoria and Albert Museum, which has the finest collection of Renaissance sculpture outside of Italy. I'm nervous because I'm not sure if this show's going to live up to my expectations or not, because I've been so hyped for it. But come inside and join me through these hallowed halls of the Victoria and Albert Museum as we see. The show starts with a punch in the gut wow moment as you're confronted by Donatello's magnificent marble David, on loan from the Padua in Florence. This is the first time the masterpiece has been on UK soil. The rest of the Florentine Foundations section reminds of the key city of Donatello's birth and includes work that might be his. Donatello was friends with some of the key movers in early Renaissance Florence, including the world-famous architect Brunelleschi. The section on the Sculptor's Workshop introduces us to the craft of sculpture, not surprisingly for the V&A, and includes some preparatory works for sculptures, including one that's possibly by Donatello, as well as this display of the sculptor's tools and a video piece of contemporary sculptors at work, which you can see here. The undoubted highlight of this section is the God the Father sculpture, which you're about to see, by Beltramino da Zuttestero. This sculpture, as you can see here, is made of copper with the attention to detail. Look at that beard, which shows the importance of a goldsmith's training for many sculptures, because Donatello himself was a goldsmith, and even though none of his goldsmith's work survives, it was obviously a really important part of his development. We're also reminded that Donatello was a businessman and he was in partnership by Michelozzo. And this includes, this section of the exhibition includes some ledgers, but my early highlight of the whole exhibition is actually this collaboration between Michelozzo and Donatello for the pulpit exterior of Prato Cathedral. And you can see Donatello's influence in the movement of the spirits here. It's a wonderful work. The show really caught fire for me in this section on tradition and innovation, which reminded us that Donatello was a tremendous innovator in three main ways. Firstly, by reintroducing the portrait bust, which combined the realism of classical sculpture with the tradition of the Christian reliquary. And Donatello was at the heart of this revival. This wonderful Donatello reliquary bust, San Rosario, was revolutionary. It was a real man you can imagine walking the Renaissance streets of Florence. This bust of a man, which is just coming up, is also possibly by Donatello. While this one is of Dr. Giovanni Cellini, who actually treated Donatello and whom Donatello gifted a Virgin and Child. The second great innovation which Donatello helped drive was focusing on low relief, this incredibly difficult technical sculptural skill, which Donatello proved to be the ultimate master of. The Madonna of the Clouds, which you can see here from Boston, is divine in its delicacy, while the V&A gets to show off its masterpiece, its Donatello masterpiece, the Ascension with Christ giving to the keys to St. Peter. Which is just, I'm going to be looking at it again and again. What really struck me more than anything was this contrast with another low relief by Donatello's contemporary Settignano, which you can see here. It's a fine Virgin and Child, but comparing it to the delicacy of Donatello, and I'm sorry Settignano, there is no competition. The exhibition leads us to a final key innovation, which combines tradition with innovation, and that is the Virgin of the Child. And a theme of the whole exhibition, as you can see here, is combining works by the master Donatello with other Renaissance masters to provide context to the world that Donatello was working in. In fact, I think that this exhibition would have been more accurately called Donatello and the Renaissance World. But anyway, these are some other artists, as you can see here, like Filippo Lippi. These are Donatello's Virgin and Child are incredibly tender. But why is it that his child's, the Christ child, always look like grumpy old men? The section Bronzes Sacred and Secular includes my favourite piece of the whole damn show, Attis Amarino, a geezer who looks as high as a kite on the poppy seeds decorating his belt, the symbol, by the way, of the Bartolini family who commissioned this. Look at his cheeky backside, and take anyone who accuses Renaissance art of being stuffy and po-faced to this sculpture. I want it in my house. Attis Amarino is accompanied by other sprites from Donatello and a range of other artists, including followers. And this is a sort of incredibly energetic part of the show, which shows Donatello's fluidity and sense of fun and spirit in these works. The mood of the exhibition sombers in the Padua section. The Miracle of the Mule, originally one of 4 bronze reliefs for the high altar at the cathedral in Padua, along with Dead Christ with Angels, are beautiful works in their own right, but they're all really an aperitif for this astonishing piece which hangs from the wall high above you, the crucifix again for the cathedral in Padua, cast in several parts. The hollow eyes and razor-sharp ribs haunted me long after I'd left this exhibition. The waif like John the Baptist, a slip of a boy really, is a highlight from the devotion and emotion section. And the way that he's exhibited and it plays off the walls is incredible and works very, very well. The exhibition ends with two more Davids, this very reworked model from the National Gallery of Art in Washington DC, and this Victoria and Albert copy of the most famous David of all, the first freestanding nude of the Renaissance. After that, the exhibition wraps up with a look at Donatello's influence both in the later Renaissance period and beyond.
Well, art lovers, I've sat on this show for a few days before summing up my thoughts, and during that time its brilliance has only grown as the images have vibrated around my brain. I think, let's get to the nub of it. This show confirms and reminds us why Donatello is such a genius in his ability to express the full range of the human condition, from the joy of the crazy figure Attis, or the Spiritello, through the tenderness of the Virgin and Child works, to the pain and desolation of the crucified Christ. Donatello's empathy and understanding of an ability to express basic humanity is why I urge you to come to this show. It's a really interesting exhibition actually, because it's not a crowd-pleasing blockbuster like maybe the Raphael show was, or the Cézanne show, which is currently until the 12th of March still on at the Tate. It's a more academic show. It's heavier, probably only about half the works are by Donatello. I didn't actually count some of them possiblies or probablies, but the ones that are there are absolutely fantastic. And the reason I urge you to come to this show, and why I give it a 9 out of 10 as one of what's undoubtedly going to be one of the shows of the year, is because it gives you a chance to see the whole range of Donatello's work in several ways, in which it's not even possible often to do if you go to his native Italy. Firstly, geographically, there are works here from his northern period in Padua, from his Florentine period, from Rome as well. So you get to see the whole Donatello over his whole long life. And remember, he was producing from his late teens, early 20s, all the way through to his 70s. And secondly, you get to see a material range. You get to see the Donatello, the master in terracotta, in marble and in bronze. And again, that's really, really special to see those things. And also in terms of influence, you get to see the classical influences on Donatello, the Christian influences on Donatello, the pagan influences on Donatello as well. And so, and although this is apparently, and I didn't go, half the size, this show's travelled from Florence via Berlin, and it's half the size of the Florentine original because lots of works from Florence, from the Bargello, couldn't come. It's still incredibly rich. I was a bit worried after the first two rooms, because after that wow moment that you saw hopefully with David, the marble David, the energy of the show drops off a bit as it explains the background and the sculpture, the process of sculpture, and the partnership that Donatello had, a sort of commercial concerns. It ramps up and for me, like, sets fire in the tradition and innovation section, where you see Donatello's influence on 3 different forms, and from then onwards it's masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And you just, it's just, I mean, I couldn't pick out highlights. There were highlights everywhere. And just to stress, when I say once in a lifetime as opposed to once in a generation, I mean that this show won't come to Britain again in the next 70, 80 years in this quality. It's the first time that it's come in anywhere near this quality ever. A couple of criticisms. I thought the end, where it was looking at homage to Donatello, was kind of unnecessary, and this kind of room which looked a bit at the Dudley Madonna, which was interesting, the controversy about whether it is a Donatello or a later fake, and also Victorian homage, let the energy seep out of the show. I'd love to have finished with the devotion and emotion section, where there's that wonderful masterpiece by Donatello of St. John. So I wondered if that was necessary. And also it was, as inevitably, and I'm pleased in some ways, it was incredibly crowded. There were some bottlenecks. However, I must say the curation was fantastic. It was a really modern curation. It wasn't just chronological. It was a bit of both. It was a bit thematic, very thematic, with little bits of chronology placed in there as well. And it was a wonderful open flow through the underground Sainsbury's Gallery at the Victoria and Albert Museum. So even though it was incredibly busy, as you'd expect for an opening Saturday, it was also manageable. I didn't feel claustrophobic at all. And I thought the curation, the lighting was outstanding. And there was one moment towards the end, which you'll all see, which is quite obviously deliberate, where you're standing quite close to the end, and through a window you see the original marble David at the start of the exhibition. Then you're confronted with another David and Goliath sculpture in front of you, another marble original. And then you look and see on the ceiling the V&A's plaster cast rendered as bronze of the most famous David, which sadly isn't in the exhibition, but is a fantastic recreation. So you get this magical moment of seeing Donatello in triangulation, if you like. Thoroughly enjoyed this show, which is on until the 11th of June. I think £20 full price is really good value, actually. I spent almost 3 hours in there, which is one of the longest I've spent in an exhibition for a long time. So my recommendation is get along there if you love sculpture and you can't get to Florence, and even if you can, it's just a wonderful opportunity. And also, I should have said as well, by the way, the different styles of Donatello, relief sculptures, it shows a lot. It's a really good academic show, so be prepared for that. Be prepared to engage with the background. Lots of works not by Donatello there to provide context. And after the first couple of rooms, I think that works really, really well. For example, in the Virgin and Child section, really love that. So yeah, 9 out of 10. Do remember to subscribe to the art vlog. Loads of shows coming up. Action, Gesture, Paint is coming up soon. The Peter Doig show as well at the Courtauld, and hopefully much, much more. So do subscribe to the art vlog, hit that notification bell. But most importantly, get out there and explore this wonderfully rich UK art scene.